My name is Diane, and I've been coming here pretty regularly for a little over 2 years. I thought about giving a talk on why I came to Zen, why I come here, and more importantly, why I stay. But this was a topic that was most alive for me these past couple weeks, so hopefully it will be something alive for you also. So the title of this talk is Non-Separateness, and the reflections on non-separateness. And the subtitle is, what is it like to be present to the present moment? What is it like to be present to the present moment? So just kind of as a foundation, and for people who may not be as familiar with the concept of non-separateness, I just want to talk about that a minute. Buddhism uses that term to say that what we perceive as things being separate is really an illusion. When we perceive things dualistically as being right, wrong, good, bad, inside, outside, that this is an illusion, and that these illusions are the cause of our suffering, because we don't see things as a whole. We don't see the oneness. We don't see the non-separateness of things. Thich Nhat Hanh uses the word interbeing. He coined that term to describe this oneness, that all things are connected. So on the one hand, we say, yeah, we are separate. You know, I'm not Ileana, you're not me. This apple is an apple. It's no way is this me, right? It sits there, I can see it, that's not me. And in human relationships, you know, we, or on the other hand, but in human relationships, we talk about healthy boundaries. Anybody that's been in therapy or reflection on any relationship knows that we need healthy boundaries. We are separate, right? We need healthy boundaries in our relationships with our family, in our workplace, in our communities. Community as small as our Sangha here, or as large as the world. I mean, right now we have a lot of countries that are not respecting healthy boundaries, right? Would you say? For thousands of years, I don't know that we've ever grasped that concept on a world scale. So on the one hand, we are different, and we need those boundaries. But what Buddhism talks about is the ultimate reality, right? The absolute reality, that at one level, nothing is separate. We are all connected. The Christian mystics talk about this. Actually, the mystics of all religious traditions talk about this oneness of reality. Quantum physics, if you read that, talks about this oneness of reality. Even though in our ordinary day-to-day discriminative mind, that's not how we see the world. So you take this apple. You know, what is this? What is it that we see? Well, if you look at it from a connected point of view, you see maybe the tree that it came from, the sun, the rain that allowed it to grow and ripen, the wind that strengthened a tree, that could hold the branch, that could hold the apple, right? The harvesters, people that harvested, the truckers that brought it to Hy-Vee or wherever, and you that went and bought it, and eventually it will take a bite of it and become part of you. But if all those things weren't there, would this apple exist? No. Or take each one of us. Now, I'm a composite of my genes from both parents, the heritage of my ancestors, the culture I grew up in, all the experiences I've had in my life, relationships I've been in, the ones where I've been loved and the ones where I haven't been. All of those things make up who I am. The dust in the universe that makes up my cells, the air I breathe, all that makes up Diane. And if those things didn't exist, would I be here? I don't think so. So the important point here, that the way I understand the non-separateness, is that it's not just the apple is connected to all those things, or that I am connected to all those things. It's that the apple exists as connection, Buddhism teaches us that all things arise as connection. Now, what does that mean? I have no idea, but that's going to be our jumping off point for what I really want to talk about today. So we talk about non-separateness as a concept, and we could keep going on talking about this and get different ideas here about what that means, and all of our Buddhist ancestors have described it and try to explain it in their writings. In the sutras, almost every sutra we read mentions this in some way or another. Just today, what was it? There's no object of mind. Right? There's nothing separate from us. There's no object of mind. That was one of the lines, right? But what I would like to talk about is our actual experience of non-separateness, and I don't think we talk about that so often. Occasionally I will hear someone talk about their experience, like here in the Zendo, where suddenly they heard a bird or the church bells, which, by the way, I didn't hear this morning. Did anybody? See, isn't that interesting how we get so used to hearing certain sounds, and at 10:25 there were no church bells. But that something happened that suddenly they were a part of it, right? So it could be a very ordinary experience, but we'll talk about those, and I'll give you some examples. Part of the reason I want to talk about this is that one of the roles I've had for the last 35 years, besides being a chaplain, is as a spiritual director, a spiritual companion. For those of you not familiar with that, the primary role of a spiritual director or spiritual companion is to help people unpack their experiences of life, right? To help people really see what's really happening in their relationships, their hopes, their dreams, their work, their families, any of those things, whatever the person wants to talk about. And one of the main things that spiritual companions or directors focus on is particularly that person's experience of what we would call the beyond, something greater than themselves. We might call that God or source or mystery, presence. That's another word that we can use. It's like, what is it like to have an experience where you're sort of lifted beyond yourself? Where all of a sudden you just realize there's this oneness that you're a part of. And sometimes those can be often are, I think, very ordinary experiences that we miss. But they can be very key for coming to know ourselves, and knowing what our deepest desires are, our deepest purpose here for being on earth. Those experiences can be very, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but it'll come back to me. Can be very important for understanding our lives. So, let me say a little bit more about that. It does help us to know what our orientation is to life, because if we have an experience like that, where we experience, let's say, the beauty of creation and our connectedness to it, we're not going to be going around abusing it and destroying it, right? It's just not going to be something we do. If we have experiences of oneness with other people, we're going to be, respectful of other people. We're not going to be aiming to hurt people. Right? So the more we attend to our actual experiences of connection with something bigger than us, it helps us to open our minds and our hearts and cultivate compassion and wisdom. So that's part of the reason of why spiritual companions do that. It's also a way to see beyond, outside of how we usually see things, from our small self, our ego self, our constructed self. And not that that's bad. That's part of our humanity, right? We embrace that. We need that. We couldn't live without that small ego self, that discriminative thinking. But an experience of something beyond us allows us to lift our perception outside of that for a moment, a glimpse, or maybe more than a moment, where we feel an expansion of our mind and our heart. So I'm going to ask you to recall if you've had an experience like that. And then in a few minutes, I'll give you a chance, maybe a few people have an opportunity to share that, okay? So what are some of the qualities of this experience? They seem to transcend our day-to-day awareness. So it might be like in nature, watching a sunrise or a sunset, or being at the ocean. Has anybody had kind of experience like that in nature where there's suddenly, wow, I'm part of something bigger? Yeah, I see a few nods. Could be in a relationship, certainly, with a partner, a friend, a family member, a loving relationship where we're suddenly lifted outside of ourselves and united in a way that is beyond our normal day-to-day experience. It can also happen with a stranger, right? So we're not just talking about people that we're familiar with. It can happen, as I mentioned, just in prayer, reflection, sitting on the cushion. Anything can be a doorway for that kind of experience. I don't know, I don't have the exact quote, but somewhere, some Buddha said anything can be a doorway to the Dharma, right? Yeah. So often these are accompanied by a feeling of awe or wonder, but not necessarily. I think it's just a sense that for a moment we step out of our normal human way of looking at things, right? I don't think these are things we can make happen. I think the harder we try to make them happen, it's not something we can strive for. It's just something to notice about how we pay attention to the present moment and whatever that present moment holds for us. So here in the Zendo, again, maybe some of you experience this because I've heard some of you talk about this. Not so much now in the winter because I didn't hear any birds singing, did you? But often a bird singing or the walnuts hitting the deck, suddenly it's like you're in a space that it's not separate from you. It's arising with you. You're a part of that, right? The experience is complete, all of itself. We're not wondering, let's see, what kind of a bird is that? I really don't like that bird song. I wish there was some other bird singing. And if we do that, that's quite okay, but that's the discriminative mind going, right? Or that church bell is too loud, it's interrupting my zazen, Yeah, that's the discriminative mind. Other times it just arises, and it's part of that one moment, and we are part of that. So what we're doing here with paying that kind of attention is just what the Buddha asked of us, 2,500 years ago. It's right from the beginning. Is it Satipatthana? Am I saying that correctly? The teachings of mindfulness, right?
Mahasatipatthana, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mahasatipatthana, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of something different then, but it's a mindfulness of breath and body. Sometimes I say, yeah, I've heard it different. Satipatthana or something. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes I use the word heartfulness because when I think of mindfulness, it often keeps me in my head about thoughts, and it's like that's the last thing, the Buddha mentioned about paying attention to thoughts. He mentioned breath and body, and then impulses or emotions, and then impulses, and then thoughts, right? So all those things are things that we bring our awareness to. And sometimes heartfulness helps me come home to my body, comes home to allowing the emotions to come and go, just like I allow thoughts to come and go. So another example is from Thomas Merton. Some of you know Thomas Merton. He's a Christian mystic, a Catholic monk, a Trappist monk. He has written many books, and in the 60s started writing about Asian religions, his visits to Asia and Eastern religions. He himself met the Dalai Lama. They had several days of dialogues together. He was very interested in in Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism in particular. So he wrote this in 1958. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. Then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts, where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach, the core of their reality. If only they could all see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. So again, just a very ordinary experience, standing on a street corner, right? And suddenly this sense that he and all of humanity were interconnected. We were not separate. I mean, he even uses that word. It was like waking from a dream of separateness. I'd like to share an experience that I had recently. Again, it's just a very ordinary experience for me. So, don't pay attention to the particulars. They don't matter. I mean, everybody's experience of this can be different. I've been attending Catholic liturgy, Catholic Mass, for those of you who are familiar with Catholic tradition, for greater part of 40 years. Then my usual narrative of late, the last several years, and I would say I kind of stopped going because I started getting stagnant, and which is part of why I came here. But usually when I would go, my discriminative mind would get going. Why did they choose this hymn? Nobody knows it. Nobody's singing. The acolytes don't know what they're doing tonight, right? Is it familiar, right? Maybe you do that here. It's like, what is that Jisha doing? She doesn't know what she's, right? I mean, our thinking minds of who's doing things right and wrong, what we like, what we don't like, our preferences, all get going. And particularly if the homily wasn't very inspiring, boy, that would really do it for me. I mean, that was one of the main reasons I went. I wanted to be inspired. I wanted to be entertained, and I wanted my friends to be there so I could socialize a little. So a couple of weeks ago, it was very different. I realized I wasn't doing that. I was just present. I didn't care that I wasn't being entertained or that I wasn't sitting near people I knew. The homily was okay. I wasn't evaluating it. It was just, nothing needed to be different than what it was. The way I wrote about it in my journal afterwards, I didn't need anything from this experience. It didn't need anything from me, and I didn't need anything from it. Just like when we hear the birds singing outside. I don't need them to be any different. Right? They don't need anything from me. It's a complete experience just as it is. Right? I wasn't grasping at some things and pushing other things away. And in the middle of this, I had this insight that everything is holy. Everyone, every person, every table and chair that was there, because it's crafted by human hands. Everything is sacred and holy and belongs. It all belongs. we use the terms things as it is, right, in Buddhism, things as it is, this suchness, and Dogen would say it's self-fulfilled, it's complete, all of itself. So why talk about these experiences? Well, a couple reasons come to my mind. When I started hearing other people talk about their experiences that kind of lifted them out of themselves, I began to pay more attention to my own experience. It was like in listening to other stories, I could hear my own story in there. And I started paying closer attention to what I was seeing and hearing and experiencing and comprehending. So that's one reason I think it's helpful to listen to one another's experiences of this, of non-separateness, right, of this oneness. And I think the other reason I alluded to earlier is that these experiences change us. They change our perspective. It may not be something dramatic, we don't notice it right away, but they do change our perspective, and we see things differently. We see things with a oneness, a unity that we maybe have not been aware of before. It's kind of like a reset, you know, a reboot. And it's like, wait, this is our nature. This is our Buddha nature. This is our true self. And we get just a glimpse of it. You know, it's usually not much and usually very ordinary. But I think that's why it's important. And there's maybe other reasons too. We can talk about that. I would like to just close with a couple verses from what we read last week. We read the verses of the faith mind, and see if you don't hear something new in these verses. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in the confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way nothing in the world can offend, and when a thing can no longer offend, it ceases to exist in the old way. So if I'm no longer offended, if my preferences are no longer offended, the things I want things to be, it doesn't exist in the old way anymore. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the old mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thing's subject vanishes. As when the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Another section. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor other than self. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just simply say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded.